Hi, everybody. Welcome. I think we've let everyone in from the waiting room. We're so glad you could all be here tonight. If you could please mute your microphones. We'll have a little Q&A and then you can unmute at that point. But my name is Amy Griffin. I'm the director here at the gallery. I'm here with Gina Ochagrosso, she's the exhibitions and marketing manager, and she's going to be letting people in from the waiting room and helping with the Q&A. We'll record this tonight and we'll put it on our YouTube channel for anyone who couldn't be here tonight. And before we begin, I just want to remind everyone the show is open through February 24th. Carl Sprague setting the stage. We have one more event. It's a ticketed event called Supper Club. We'll have a delicious catered meal here in the gallery. Information about that is on our website, opalka.sage.edu, and it's catered by Brandon Shatko, who goes by Chef Humble, and he has a great menu lined up for us. I'm so thrilled that we have these four distinguished panelists, and I want to thank Carl for introducing us to Deborah Newhall, Dan, I'm sorry, I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name. Courchaine, and Perry Grebin. And I didn't say what each of you do. Deborah is a costume designer, Dan is a scenic artist, and Perry is a graphic designer. And of course, Carl is an art director and concept illustrator. But I'm going to let each of them talk about themselves and introduce themselves, and we'll get to know more about what they do. And we're going to have Deborah go first.
Please.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm a costume designer for lots of different kinds of work, from theater for years and ballet, opera, and commercials and industrials and film features, and also some television. So it's been a checkerboard career of all kinds of things, which is a lot what happens to all of us. You sort of you try to say yes to every project and make sure that they're all going to fit in your schedule. And I went to art school as an undergraduate and became interested in just figures and lots of drawing of figures. And then I taught figure drawing at RISD, and I taught figure drawing at Brandeis University and taught there for several years. I taught at Brown for 6 years. And I got those kids to draw. They were all kids from different backgrounds in my classes, especially Brown. And we talked about that with Carl, about trying to get people to draw. And it seems like such a foreign activity to people now. People aren't used to working with their hands and their eyes and a piece of paper and a tool, a pencil, a pen. But I would give them tricks to figure out how they could get comfortable with a certain tool in their hand and begin to start drawing and figure out, ideas for costume stuff, because these are costume classes. So, but, the reliance on the team is key. I mean, your director gives you the start to think about the show, and you've read the script several times, no matter what the script is. And then working from the top down, the production design, or the set costumer, or not the set designer, and what the themes are that are getting worked out, because they start things first. And then I rely on them to find out what's going on with their construction and color and surfaces and materials, and dark show, a light show, a comedy. I mean, there's an endless variety of kind of things that you're putting up on the stage. And also working with the actors, and working, because when I see them, I'm doing fittings or doing muslins if we're building things for a theater, and getting ideas of what's going on in their heads to kind of pull from, because I want to hear what they've been hearing in rehearsals if I haven't been able to go, and just sort of what's kind of going on out there, and what, if anything changing, and what's going on with your character and your trajectory, or go through to get to the end of the story. And it's, you're just sort of knitting together all this information that you're getting from them, the director, stage management, and fittings. A lot happens in fittings, and I like to do fittings because we really discover a lot, and they start to find out who they are, because I don't like them to leave me from a fitting and not understand what they're about to wear and why their clothes are what they are, what the color is, what the condition is, what the, the situation, to make it interesting, but also try to add something fun, or maybe not fun, or something, little quirks in costumes for them personally that they can sort of kind of run with and know that they've had, me really thinking about them and making good stuff for them, and also for the whole feeling of the whole play or the whole story, the whole film. Just every show you set up a different kind of setting of how you begin to lay it out and organize it, and then get in there and sort of chomping away to kind of construct it all. And sometimes it's drawings, and sometimes it's just research with photographs. You just have to be curious. That's what I keep saying to students. I said, try to stay curious, look for things that jog your interest in something, that you can really find things that are hidden in books and online and stuff that you could then draw upon to add flavor to your shows. That's sort of the beginning of it. But all of us all work sometimes in different corners of the show, or of the community, the film community, or the television community, or even theater. And we don't all see each other until sort of maybe towards the end, or in production meetings almost. But it's not a singular thing. It's definitely a team. I know. Yep.
Well, to me, that's the most interesting part, is that I mean, every project is different. I mean, they all have different things they're trying to accomplish, and some actively and creatively, some sort of more accidentally, if you will. But we're always inventing something new, and that's what makes it worth it, actually. It really is.
Well, it's fun to see your environments that you create. I mean, these spectacular sketches with touches of watercolor and little moody things kind of all over them. They're just engaging. You just want to like walk through the door, or what's in behind that window. That's
Well, come on in.
Well, to say to an actor, what do you, you're going to be walking in front of this, or there's a door in that facade that you need to come through, and what do you think's on the other side? Oh, we've seen it, it's the lobby, or it's what. But just put your head in there and let it just roll around and see what thrills you and jogs your interest, and really, so that you're really enjoying the project, that you make it fun for yourself and fun for other people.
Yeah.
So Deborah, once you've conceived of your designs, you've designed the costume, then are you starting with like loose sketches and then making a very detailed thing that could be an actual pattern, kind of like what Carl does, or does it go on to another person who then makes the pattern?
There's a whole line of people below my position that all have their parts to play. But I'm somebody, I have a pencil in my hand all the time when I'm reading the script. I try to read the first time without any pencils or any pens or anything, just so I read it through. Then I read it a second time, and then I'll start to make some thoughts down the margins or in the middle of the page. I'm somebody who really likes to draw, and I've been drawing forever, since little kid, and I like drawing figures.
And you're very good at it.
Thank you.
Look who's talking, Carl.
Yeah.
Please.
But so there, you'll look at my scripts, and there's like little noodly figures and stuff down or a sketch of a hat, or a sketch of a hairdo, or I want to see a shoe, so I'll draw a little shoe thing that's going to go on that character. And I think about color, whether it's warm tones or cool tones or dark tones, or colors that are clashing, that are calling attention to them, to the characters, that can be informative. There, it could be intentional, that you're trying to build tension. So sometimes opposing colors on the near each other, they kind of bounce off of each other because their colors are not in harmony, or they are just active, and they bounce away. I mean, I think about color all the time, about the colors of where the location is, whether it's in a warm place or a cold place, or imagined some place that is not real. and what the color is associated with all of that, the colors of the shadows, the color of, people's clothing. It's it's a process. So I'm doing sketches, little things those are just personal little thoughts on the margins. But then when it comes down to it, I've got to, do sketches for all these people. And, I find images that are maybe the shape and the size or the attitude of the performer. And I might sort of use that body shape to then, sketch clothes on that person. And then they're black and white, and then we throw them around on the floor and look at them. And I, said, here's a group that works together. Here's a group that works together. If it's a period thing, it's important to go through that process. And a lot of people see the rough sketches, and then we begin to approve things. Things get approved, and then I draw them out more, and then I do paint. And sometimes I do paint options might do several looks. I mean, several options of one change, just to kind of get it right. But it's all about communicating through the sketches, and then they go to the shop for having things or else.
Did you end up keeping your sketches, by the way? I mean, or does the production run off with them?
I think Deborah's frozen.
Oh dear.
She's frozen, it's true.
Oh dear.
She looks good, but she's frozen.
Restaurant aprons
she's back.
and trim and hats and sports teams and stuff like that we need a graphic designer for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always interested in what the set colors are going to be, what the environment of the interiors when you're painting. Like to see the colors that are primary to each character.
Oh, it's really important. And I mean, I always feel like the level of conversation that I have with the wardrobe department is inadequate, but and yet at the same time, somehow we managed to make it work, and I feel like a lot of times there, I mean, more than in almost any other part of the creative project of a movie, that there's almost like at best a kind of a sort of a sort of a sixth sense kind of communication where when we sort of absorb a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And if I haven't really said, like, here, this room's going to be red, this is going to be, I mean, this is the wallpaper, somehow it works out. I don't know. I mean, it's I mean, that's just me raving here, but it's
well, it has to work out, right? I mean, or sometimes the last minute the chair has got to change because the person sitting in it is the same color as the chair,
exactly
that kind of thing.
Right. No, these things matter.
Yeah.
Well, how fantastic. Gosh.
Can I ask you a question, Carl?
Yeah, what's that?
In production design, when you're starting out and you read the script for the first time, do you go through it like Deborah does, where you don't have a pencil?
Just the same thing, read it through first, see if it's sufficiently worthy to even get involved with, although my standards have become rather flexible. But then break down, then then you start pulling it apart and making lists of what's important, what has to happen, what scenic elements, what props, what I don't know, special effects or anything like that. I mean, it just then it's tearing it up into things that eventually become work lists or marching orders for drawings and designs.
And are you limited by budget? And when you have that first read, do you
invariably invariably, but I make it a point not to,
Yeah.
because frankly, I've worked in enough situations kind of high and low that, you can do something with nothing.
Mhm.
It's good to have a little bit. But I've worked on a bunch of things where there was tons of money and it didn't necessarily make it better.
I've noticed that.
It's about having an idea, and having a vision, and then, I mean, uh and then you can proceed. Make it happen somehow. So
I heard a story once from a production designer who told me that his first job was, I think, because he was like the assistant set decorator, and it's somehow like everybody on the show was gone or arrested or dead or whatever happened, and he was the guy now. And they said, so it's your job, make it look good and don't spend any money. And that's been his byword since then.
exactly. Well, that will keep you popular with the producers. Anyway, Deborah, so thank you so much for joining us. It's really a privilege to have you. And I might come back and like try to loop you into my class again. You made such an impression. Would you be okay? Would be okay with me asking?
You can ask, sure.
Okay, there you go. All right, well, we'll figure it out. Anyway, they're a nice crowd. They seem.
I never
So,
got to ask.
Deborah, I know you have to leave early. Do you need to go now, or
No,
we
no,
could
my
open it up for
husband.
questions from the audience if there's any specific
I'd be happy
costume
to take
design
a question.
questions?
Yeah, let's get a question.
Okay.
I'm just looking at my watch, but I'm fine. Yeah, I'd love to hear from who's out there who's got a question about costume design.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So you talked about making a costume design. So is there any like recommendations you would give to newer designers? Like any tips or tricks?
Well, that's a big
Now that
question.
you are a lot more,
That's 3 years of graduate school.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's about how to organize yourself, how to do a breakdown, how to, lay out a plot, how many costumes per character. There's software you can use or you can do a spreadsheet or whatever. I tend to do my plays on paper. I do a breakdown because I bring my plot to fittings and I'm making notes on things as I'm going along. But because you need to know how many costumes you're dealing with in a show, no matter if it's a 2-person show or it's got 25 people in it and everybody keeps changing their clothes every 10 minutes. You need to know that so that you can begin to figure out a budget. And also watching who's in scenes together so you can sort of lay out colors almost. I mean, that's not the start of it, but it's something to have in your head. So it's like doing a graph. You've got the scene numbers at the top and you've got the characters this way, and then you make notes where they appear in each scene. You can make costume 1, costume 2. Because on Broadway, you want to know how many costumes you've got because you get paid by the costume. So it's good to know that they're all there. And also just so that you can budget, whether they're being shopped, whether they're being built. You have to have that information. You have to be really clear in your understanding of your budgeting. And then once you have it down, then you can figure out what you're going to make and what you're going to shop and what you can maybe rent. Because costumes come from anywhere. I mean, it's endless and massive where clothes come from or where things come from for constructing a character's garment. That's the first thing. And also research. You may be doing a play that's been done like 1,000 times already, but it's new to you and it's new to these actors who are doing it. You want to have a different take on it, perhaps, or a different look or different feeling. You're going to find some way to sort of flip things around so it just is, maybe the director is trying to freshen it and sort of rearranging things. You can't do too much, I guess, because playwrights, you get in trouble with playwrights. But, Shakespeare can do anything too. Find that theme that you want running through your look and make it unified and expand on it and make it thrilling. And think about, the kickoff of the first look for everybody, and then how it all ends at the end, and then how it all noodles along together. I mean, it's a lot, because you have to know something about everything. It's also, you just have to be, researching and collect books. Not everything is online. Sometimes there are just perfect books that are in your library that can, inspire you. I would say start collecting photography books is a good place to start for finding people in different time periods and stuff, and see how they wear their hat and how they wear their collars and how they, what they look like when they have scarf on them, and, their shoes and the length of their jackets on their suits and stuff. It varies from, decade to decade, from the dawn of time to the future.
Carl joked about grad school, but is grad school something that's sort of, it is recommended?
I don't know. I'm not sure. There are some wonderful grad schools. And I was told early on, oh, you must go to graduate school. What was it, Nikos Sakaropoulos over at the Williamstown Theater Festival. But I did. I went to NYU for 3 months before I went broke, and was simultaneously offered a job and had to leave New York and move into my wife's house up in Stockbridge, where I've been stuck ever since. And but I learned a lot in that little period of time. I've been going to another school, the amazing Polikoff Studio and Forum for Stage Design over on Washington Street in the West Village, which was an excellent education. You paid by the class. I mean, the thing is, I think that, a lot of the skills that are involved with this work, you learn on the job. And 90% of it, but getting a leg up in school is worth it. I mean, if you've got good teachers and definitely advisable. I don't know, a 3-year program seemed to me like crazy, but I don't know. I like I said, I'm not the right person to talk about that.
So there's a couple more costume questions, and then we should let introduce Perry and Dan also. But let's see, question in costuming, is there a difference when you are replicating something with historical accuracy or making compromises that feel accurate for the viewer?
It depends. I would say you're not out doing purely historical recreations necessarily. I mean, with every single detail, but it should be closer to being super correct if you can do it. It's hard to do absolute accurate historical things, because you're seeing it through the eyes of the time you live in and what materials are available to you. And you can't necessarily have all the hats made that are going to take 60 hours a piece to have them done, and hand woven straw and silk flowers. And sometimes you can get it done, sometimes you cannot. You've got to find other ways to show the silhouette and have the period respect it. But sometimes you cannot. It's almost impossible to be perfectly period. But if you're off a little bit, because you can't have all the silky fabrics and the beautiful wools that are in museums. You can't find those things to put them on stage. You can find things to suggest and honor the past, but it is now time that you're doing this, and so that there's whether you realize you're doing it or not, but you're weaving in 2024 in your choices and what's available to have things made from. It's tricky. You don't really want to do a documentary unless that's what it's called for, but it's tricky. But as long as it's consistently unified as a show, then your audience is going to forgive you and go, well, that's not quite right. And I'm an expert in 1805, not doublets of jackets and coats, and that's okay. It might not be an exact, but it appeared.
Hey, Deborah, did you get a chance to see the Sergeant show? That's at the MFA with the clothes. Oh shoot,
She's frozen again.
Okay.
Well, that question was from Malia, but thank you, Malia. But also Kathy had a question about period costuming. Did that also answer your question, Kathy? I think those both kind of got answered in that answer, but thank you, Deborah. So Perry, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience and how you got where you are?
Yeah, I had started at drawing, really young, and I was always into art and illustration, and I thought I was going to be a cartoonist, and I always sort of had a facility with graphic design. That wasn't my main focus, and then when I went to RISD, I went for film. And yeah, you went. No, there's a RISD connection there. I don't know if you were there when I was there, but anyway, at RISD, I focused more on film, and I always think about studying film at art school is like studying art at film school. Like you're not really getting the pure education that they are sending, but at the same time, it informed my appreciation of film through a much more curated, I guess, esoteric lens than you would get at, say, like NYU or USC, where it's very commercial. Anyway, then I started making films of my own, and it was, it's not remunerative at all. You're constantly broke and scrounging, and I was always concerned that what I was doing didn't look good enough, and I would always go in and fix things, and I wound up becoming more the art person for films for other people than for myself, and stopped doing directing and writing and shooting, and in the meantime I was also still doing graphic design, and I was painting a friend of mine's house. She was a producer, and I was, she saw me with the brush, like doing line on the wall, and she said, "Tell me again why you're not in the scenic union." And I said, I don't know. And so at that time, you could do an interview and present your portfolio, which was very print based and very tactile, and not like it is now, I guess, where it's more digital, and you still go up in front of the scenic board, as it were, of the peers who judge you adequate or not ready or whatever. And they said yes, and I got in, and that was maybe 2009, but I'd already been doing film for 20 years at that point. So when I started doing graphic design for movies and TV and theater, it was like all my skills came together. So I was much more, I was at home, like I had walked into film sets and oogled and was very covetous of being on the camera crew or the costumes, and yet there's all different departments, different personalities of each of those people. And when I walked into the art department one day, I said, "Oh, these are my people. I get
This
it.
is the place to be.
I know these people. These are me. I understand these people." And sure enough, they welcomed a RISD guy, whereas other departments and cameras were just sort of like, yeah, you want to do that over there. So I eventually was trusted with graphic design, which in movies most people are if they don't know the trade, they sort of, what is that again? Do you do the credits? Do you do the title sequences? Is that what you do? And I say, well, no. My job is really anything that you see that's two-dimensional, basically, that has a picture or a word on it, whether it's like an album cover or a logo or a storefront or a book, prop, cigarettes, even the matches. That's my job, to come up with a design. And Carl is my boss, And then there's an art director. I mean, he's not always my boss, but his job is my overlord. And I'm, and sometimes I do costumes. Like somebody comes to me and says, we're doing a lifeguard and we need the pool, or we're doing a high school and we need the mascot, the logo for the cheerleaders or whatever. And sometimes I deliver that stuff. Does that sound right, Carl?
Yes. Oh no, sure. I mean, but you know, I mean, one thing is we're constantly doing a dance around, image rights and copyrights and so forth, because there's a a problem there. I mean, people own images, and sometimes they can be aggressive about it. Though a lot of times I think that it's more the producers, lawyers that are concerned about, whether we own something or not. But in order to get around that, I mean, we have to like generate new and interesting imagery and new variations on things that the film company can own. And I mean the graphics tell a story, and I feel like more and more, as I've worked over the years, the kind of the hunger of a film production for graphics has just grown. I mean, all the time. I mean, we're just like chewing through all this stuff, and
A lot of the requests I get are for I hear requests all the time for something that looks like something but isn't that thing, because they want to own the rights, but they want to suggest the thing that they're looking at, whether it's like we want it to be like it's a moving company, and like if I give them a fresh original moving company logo, they say like, what's that? I don't know, that's a moving company. But if I imitate, say, like the Ryder truck, and they say like, oh, that's too close, we're going to get sued because it looks like Ryder truck. So I have to change it enough that it's original, but make it so iterative that people are instantly aware of what it's supposed to be. And a lot of times,
and also that it be good, because the other thing is, there's a lot of stuff out there that you see in television and film that goes out there, and and it's not that good.
But period stuff is really fun, actually.
It's corny or embarrassing,
That is true, but sometimes we have to imitate how bad it really is, and that's kind of fun. Even on period stuff where it's like filthy and degraded, and
even more
sometimes I even add graffiti, or like I do a sign that is like scribbled with ballpoint pen, like no checks or whatever it says on the, sometimes it's incredible amounts of wallpapering of signs. Like I had to do a bodega once, and my God, like everything was like in a new original ad, and it was from like 1970. So everything had to have an oldish look to it. And I do study a lot of period typefaces and looks, and what information is available. I did a show recently that had we did London in the 1850s, but as a flashback. And so there was like all these. That was Spirited. Do you know that film?
Oh yeah,
like
sure.
The musical with with Ryan Reynolds. And there was this whole sequence, and because they insisted on shooting in Boston and like the 3 streets that could pass for 1850s London, they needed to cover everything that was now there. A lot of my job is making things go away, as they say.
Mhm.
Like there's a thing over here on that sign, and like we just don't want to see it. So make something that looks like it belongs there, but we don't really. What you're doing is covering the thing that's behind it. So we just want that thing to go away. So make something we don't even notice. Like, that's a skill, I think. To make some graphic that's handsome, that fits, that no one will see, even though it's right in front of them. Make it invisible.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what we do actually is, the art that strives to go unnoticed. I mean, it wants to be, it's the background. It wants to recede, so that the main story can shine. But that doesn't mean that it's any less work.
No.
We have a question
plenty.
from Matt for Perry about AI and how
Hmm.
how has it affected your job, and has it made it easier to create content where you don't have to worry about rights issues?
I wish I knew the answer to that. AI is so new that everybody's still kind of biting their nails to see how it's all going to shake out and whether I don't, at the moment, AI has not helped me at all going forward. I mean, so much of my research is now done on the computer, and Google Images used to be like a really great tool for reference images, and it kind of still is, but it seems to have changed over the years into like more of like a shopping site, and now I can't find the images I used to, and I'm always searching for new images on real original products that I need to imitate or take colors from or get ideas from on eBay and Flickr, and eBay does really well. People take really nice photographs of their old album covers and products, and whether I have to make matches or razor blades or something or a magazine cover, like I can often I've done a lot of playbills for shows. It seems like people always want a playbill, and so people have saved them and they take photographs of the inside. I couldn't ask for better research material. But on the other hand, like original art that supposedly AI is going to do, I think is much more helpful in the concept stage. And yet it's like it's making me a little worried that a lot of the work we do that's original and bespoke is going to seem really easy to people, and my job will become no different, except that people will expect me to churn it out just as fast, which is just not possible. Oh, and the other thing about AI that has helped me is that oftentimes it's my job to do Photoshop work to create a mantelpiece photograph of a father and a son from a long time ago, but the actors have never met, and the pictures are wildly different. One was taken on a beach and one was taken in a car, and I have to combine them to make them look okay. And sometimes it's like a Franken photo and looks awful, and I will ask for something else. But sometimes I'm given a photo that is so degraded that I can't even rescue it. And it's going to take so much time and work. It's just not worth it for the small amount of time it'll be seen on screen. And I have used AI twice, I think, because there's several of these tools that will restore images or actually create a non-blurry version of what is a very blurry photograph.
Mhm.
And it is
Oh,
astonishing
cool. Okay.
how it will work. It will work in about 10, 20 seconds. And what would normally be like me basically just painting it fresh has been revealed as almost a photograph. And I can actually kind of dial that into a something that looks like a legitimate. It's happened twice now, and both times I've been like, I can't tell anybody I did this. It's really good. I don't want to say anything, but they think I'm a magician. But the fact is, it's all going to be very easy for a lot of people soon. And that's the only time I have used it, and I hope I never otherwise have to employ it. But I've seen concept illustrations that have frightened me with how, like, someone says, "Oh, we want to see Mardi Gras," through Gustav Klimt's eyes, and then the thing churns out within like 20 minutes, like 12 beautiful, huge, complex illustrations that all sell that whole concept. And I was like, could you put that away? Don't wave that around in here. So the graphic designers are a little worried about that, and I don't know where it's going to go yet until the next contract is up and we, codify where things can come from. But lawyers are going to be very happy, and they're usually the least happy people on the show.
Has AI affected your work, Deborah?
Not yet, but I feel it coming. I think there's ways to scan garments and then they can be recreated without human hands. I don't know. It's a world that is really going to be changing the business, I think, a lot.
So,
I
and
think
there,
it's going to change our whole world. People are going to start expecting it to be that way.
yeah.
I mean,
Carl, you
knows?
Fortunately for you, Dan, though, there's no
pencil,
AI
right?
in your world.
What's that?
I said,
AI?
Dan, sorry.
I'm ignoring it for the moment. I mean, my feeling also is that
Let's see.
one of the things about it is that, as clever as it may be about the creating details and you know and even like mimicking styles and so forth, um I mean, it's not going to come up with content and 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 I mean, someone still has to push the button, and someone has to still tell the story and think about it. And I don't think that the machines have replaced us there yet. So
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
So, Dan, you're a scenic artist. You need to introduce yourself, give us some information about your experience, but we also maybe AI isn't something that you have to think about as much as a scenic artist.
Well, that is true. So yes, I am a scenic artist. And my responsibilities, Carl would be my boss, technically. And
it
so
never feel that.
my department is responsible for all paint and wallpaper and anything you see, essentially. If that's not furniture, it's not a prop, certainly not a costume. So over the years, I've learned to do, you have to do everything. You have to know something about everything. There's always going to be somebody who's better than you, but you have to be able to hold your own. Fake it till you make it. I mean, that's what we all do. But so we, like, when I read the script, I don't care who's saying what. I mean, as a consumer, I care because I hope it's a good product. But for a scenic, I care where they're saying it, not who is saying it. I want to know what kind of sets we're going to be making. This is outside, this is inside, we're in a cave, we're in a spaceship, what have you. So those are the kind of things I look for. And my job is much more tactile. Like, Perry sits at a desk, Carl sits at a desk a lot. I have a desk usually. I sit there at break. But I have always I like to make things with my hands. And so I'm out on the stage floor, and I came from a theater background. I did not come from an artistic family. I did not even know that this was even possible until I hit college. And even then, I barely got my head out of, so you can start late. If I can do it, but it's, so a lot of my job is technical. Like, I want it to be, let's say you're making a room, you have to make it look like a room. But then Carl has designed, well, all the walls come apart and the ceiling comes off and it's going to get a flood, and because the sink's going to overflow and they're going to spill blood, and they have to be able to reset everything. So you have to decide what products you're going to use. Maybe you do tests, maybe you do all sorts of samples. But, like, I don't get to pick the colors. Carl does that. I help him, I advise, or someone in that role, if asked. But then you make their room, and now you won't need it to, maybe you make it look 30 years old, or it was a crack house, or you're making a Hooverville, or you're making a spaceship. Everything is different. And that's the best part, is that you're learning something every time. I don't have to deal with actors. Wet paint and actors do not mix. They don't like you can't make it smelly, you can't make it sticky, you can't, so we are gone before they arrive. That is the best part. except when they change their schedule, which then changes your schedule. But
Right.
so I love the creative process, but I don't need to be near the camera. That has never been my desire. It's a whole different, and depending on the show, I might have 5 people working for me. I might have 25 people working for me. And it's sometimes it's crazy, sometimes it's not, but it's always different and it's very creative, but not. If you've ever seen a movie being made, it's really boring most of the time. There's a few moments of magic in a 14-hour day, but so I don't, that is not my thing. But that's the napkin version.
So if Perry designs a sign, you'll paint the sign.
Sometimes it's if it's a period, when we say period, sadly, you know, in the 1970s, vinyl started coming in and printing things. So now you might do a show that's in the 90s and half of it is manufactured as opposed to machine manufactured, as opposed to hand painted. If you're doing a show that's in the 50s or the 60s even, can be great. We did a street scene in Boston that was fantastic for a show. And there were so many signs. And what was great about it was that it was of a time where literacy was not great. So a lot of the signs were, you're a watchmaker, or do you have a big watch, a big timepiece outside your shop? Because then you say, oh, it's a clock shop, or it's a watch store, or you have the big shoes, or for outside the cobbler. Those things are great and they're fun. But yeah, I might paint Perry's things. Once in a while, I'll help out costume, but generally costumes and wet paint don't go together either. So we make sure our paint doesn't rub off on Deb's clothes.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's
We do our
important.
best.
And
No-
also, Dan, one thing that you also do is make sure that stuff can be restored if you're shooting on a location, that the stuff that you're putting on can come off later, right?
That is always the goal. Yes, that if we go to a real place or we want to change something, it either can wash off or you have it designed in. You don't want to do something that you can't come back from. That, again, that makes the lawyers mad. So
And with locations, you want to leave them better than you found them, you know.
ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we create signage for a place that, like that candy store on I forget what it was. I think it was Cafe Society that Woody Allen pictured. There's a candy store in Queens in New York that had it was clearly the architecture and the interior were from like 1910 maybe, and they wanted it was a 1950 movie or 30, actually no, it was the 30s, and they wanted it to be of the 30s but still have the 1900 look, and the windows were all moderned out, so I had to make old looking signs that then went on to this original old candy store place. And I didn't apply the signs, I just designed them in gold and black, and they were applied by the I don't think you worked on that, Dan.
No.
Whoever dressed those windows, we were supposed to take it off afterwards and restore the place back to what it was when we found it. But they liked it so much that it's been there ever since. It's been like 8 years, I think. And not only has it been there ever since, but several movies have come to shoot there specifically because it looks like it's from 1900. And so my art has been in like, I don't know, 8 movies now.
I don't
Because
know
of
if
that
I don't know if
location.
they're still there, but on
Maybe.
Fifth Street in the East Village, there were there's like 3 storefronts in a row that
Bye,
were
Dad.
dressed for
Ready?
uh,
Nice to
Sorry,
see you guys.
Carl.
Sorry, Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Deborah,
Enjoy
bye.
Thank
your.
thank you, thank you.
Okay.
So great to talk to you. Anyway, I'll be after you soon. Watch
Okay.
out. Hey, sorry,
Number's still the same. Okay.
dragging me into my vortex here, but there are 3 windows on Fifth between like First and A that are addressed for I think it was The Godfather 2, and they've left them there since they shot that film. They're
In
still there.
1974 or whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, exactly.
73.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're looking a little
That's-
dusty. They loved it so much.
Yeah. Recently we did a movie where I had to design this huge mural. So I painted a mural, like, you know, basically on the computer, and then sent it to the scenics, but they needed to do it really fast. So I made a version of this giant mural that was like 15 feet by 5 feet. And it was the Pelican Bar. And the production designer, a Swede by the name of Jorgen Larson, he was very, very specific about what the Pelicans were doing, what kind of style it was, you know, and I gave him all sorts of references, and I then painted this whole thing. And I'm like, I don't know how to paint a pelican, but I guess I did. And then he liked it enough, and I sent them a I sent to the printer something that was put to scale on removable vinyl of an outline, basically a color by numbers outline. I sent them the full, you know, colored version of this thing. And then the scenics went, because they had to do it fast, they painted on this removable vinyl the colors into the outlines. And in the end, it looked like it was on the wall. It looked exactly right. They did a beautiful, beautiful job. And it was all ready to come off the wall and leave the stuff that was underneath it, which was some like terrible artwork and like football schedules that were pasted on there. It was supposed to be temporary, but the bar loved it so much that it's still there in the place, and nobody knows that it came from a movie. To them, it's just like, oh yeah, that's the Pelican artwork. The bar is called the Pelican.
That's
So,
great.
first of all, is the union that you're all in the same union for all like
Yes.
art-related jobs? And is it pretty much required? To be able to get work, you have to be in a union.
It definitely helps. And you know, I mean, as much as I can grouse about various aspects of the union, it's been enormously helpful to me. I mean, you know, I get health benefits. Uh, you know, they help me out with savings and pension stuff. And most importantly, they set a like base rate for various departments, you know, so that you're not, I mean, because, you know, none of our jobs last more than, you know, a few months, half a year or something, if you're lucky. And so there's kind of a constant churn. And every time you start a new job, it's a renegotiation. But if there's the union involved, then they've at least set a base floor, you know, platform that is the assumption. And sometimes, I mean, it can be pretty good. So.
And the hours per day are limited, and the lunch hour is mandated, and there are a lot
Right.
of protections so that workers aren't run over by, because obviously movie production is very expensive, and the time is money, money, money. And you know, they'll work a lot. Adding days to the schedule is terrible. So really what they want to do is add hours to the day. And
Right.
routinely in the United States anyway, working many, many hours is cheaper than adding days to the schedule at the end. And if everybody's on the set and they only have to feed them like twice as opposed to, you know, 2 extra days, it all works out to money. But the union prevents too many abuses from happening. There's still a lot of liberties taken, I think, but people are afraid to cross the union as far as you know, treating the workers either poorly or running afoul of, you know, some snitch who's in there who's like got a phone call onto the union like they're working us another hour and there's no meal break. But by and large, I think that there's a lot of respect for the worker because the union is defending them, if not by tooth and nail, but in contracts.
Yeah,
And
left to their own devices. I mean, you know, the machine of the producers and 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 a movie, you know, could kill you. So, you know, you need some.
The Medicaid long-term care plan.
Well,
For a couple of Susan, first.
But he's, thanks.
what was that?
That was someone was unmuted.
Oh,
Um,
all right.
So I know that the writer's strike and the actor's strike were both a lot of what they were about was AI
Disaster.
was part of it. So is there there's no plans for any kind of, that you know of, for any kind of similar strikes in from the artists strike? Or whatever
Uh,
the artists union, whatever your union's called.
yeah, Dan, you talk.
Well, I was in a negotiating meeting earlier today. What's coming up is negotiations for the Hollywood, what's called the Hollywood Basic Agreement, and that covers all the Hollywood locals. We're all part of an international, but everybody has their local. So the basic agreement, the area standards agreement, which covers basically the rest of the country, except New York City, and the Teamsters, everybody's contracts are coming up at the same time, so that hopefully through strength through numbers, it will be, and after coming off the strike, nobody wants to strike again. We all want a fair deal. Sitting in on different aspects of the negotiation committee, I wonder, I have doubts, I have wonders, I have fears. But nothing is off the table. I'll say that.
Isn't the contract up for what can I say, review of expires in July, end of July?
Our contract is up in end of July.
Yeah.
The New York City contract is up end of August, end of September. So
Okay.
that'll come up right after.
Right.
But
So hopefully a good deal, a fair deal.
Well, all I can say is better get busy, make some movies quick before there's more chaos.
Are there more questions from the audience? You're welcome to put them in the chat or raise your hand and we can call on you to turn off your mic.
All right.
I have a question
Answered
myself,
all.
if nobody minds. Carl, when you are doing your initial, I guess, concept sketches, do you start doing them immediately, or do you dream about them? Do you put the script under your pillow and have your watercolors with you at all times?
Oh, all of the above. A lot of it's research and reference, and like just sort of educating oneself, looking at pictures and pictures. Like when I did the Grand Budapest sketch, I mean, they had yards and yards of wonderful pictures of, gorgeous 19th century spas and hotels and just sort of like, put them up all up on the wall and look at them and let them like ooze in. Scripts will sometimes tell you a lot. I don't know but I find one of the things is that it doesn't matter if you have a lot of intention. Sometimes, even if you haven't got a thought in your brain, just the action of putting, a pen or a pencil to paper, and starting to move your hand around and making a mark, will kind of like gradually get you there. Because part of it's like the idea of a picture, but also if you're doing something that involves actual thought, or an idea, that can take weeks or months to like filter down to actually figure out, like, what is it that we're really trying to say. I mean, I've been working on this Swan Lake production seems to have gotten sort of left by the way, but maybe it'll come back. But I mean, I swear I was drawing pictures for that, and quite detailed ones, about 6 months before I figured out what it was that the whole arc of the set design was actually about. And so it's a thought process, but some of it, like I say, starts just with the mechanical, and not even like, don't worry about your brain, just move your fingers around.
Well, your art is so beautiful, it clearly shows that you're just moving the brush and magic is happening. And like some of those early sketches for La La Land or for
those are the quickest things ever.
so they launch from your head fully formed, like Athena from the head of Zeus, and you're done. You're done, but you still get paid.
Sometimes, exactly.
We have a couple questions in the chat. Kathy asked Carl what your first stop for references is, like where,
Well, now it's all like, it used to be books and magazines and stuff, but now it's all like, Google and Pinterest or whatever. But I don't know, I like it all. I mean, anything you can find. I mean, the internet makes gathering images so simple, it's crazy. But yeah.
Carl, when you and I worked on, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We worked on a couple of movies with Santo, and
Yes.
he has like this bizarre like photographic memory, and he has every book ever published that has some painting in it, and he
Right.
knows every page, and he just looks through it, and he would hand me like these huge, thick books that had 18, 20, 30 little post-its on it, saying he wanted to scan them and use them. And he's old school enough that for him it was like, oh, don't worry about the rights, we'll just flip the image and it'll be copyright free after that.
It'll be fine.
And right.
Helen
And then
will
of
take
course
care of
it was my job to make them different somehow, and he would hate that. But at the same time, his references are still in my head. He introduced me to many painters I didn't know, or periods of poster design that I didn't know. And the books that are no longer published, that have never been scanned and are not on the internet, are like an incredible original trove of material that other movies just don't do. It's so easy to do it if you're copying something you found on the internet, because it's now, you see that same image over and over and over again until it all looks identical. But the freshest stuff is the stuff that's in the books that are in the library or in a specialty bookshop, or better yet, on the shelf of a production designer who's been around for more years than you have. And that's what I do in most people's houses, is I go straight to their bookshelf and I look at their art and photography books, or if there's a period book about jazz or about cars or something like that, I'll just glance through it, and some of those images will stay with me. Unfortunately, I carry a phone that has a camera in it, and I can just seize these things and store them in a little morgue of my own, and have if you're assiduous and you can label things properly, which I don't really do enough, you can call these images back and say, I have a sign, I have an image that I know.
And also, like, even stealing images from other movies,
always.
I mean, I love a screen grab. They've figured out technology now to defeat you, which
that's true.
Yeah,
but, here's a funny story. Since
that?
We're on, funny stories. On this the same Spirited movie, that London thing, where we had to do hanging signs outside these old 1850s shops, I had looked for references not only in books, and I found some really wonderful ones, but the photography of the 1850s is not nearly as popular as stuff from the 1900s. So we were doing a lot of fudging to date things back or find things in those 1900 images that were probably 50 years old when that photo was taken. But in one case, actually more than one case, I watched some movies that took place in that time that were made many, many years ago, that were as close as I could get to the period, which was like 1930 or 1925. And I stole references from there. But in the original movie, the David Lean Oliver Twist, there's
Oh yeah.
a sign of there's a sign because Oliver Twist, the character is shunted off from the orphanage to an undertaker, and he has a hanging sign that says cheap funerals on the outside. And but it's in the movie, and I stole that sign whole and put it in our movie, and they were pleased with it and hung it up. So that is a movie reference that is in another movie, and I think only the really dedicated types will notice it. But it was fun because it was hand painted, Dan.
Well, I mean, when I was working for Gregory Crutzen, we kept on he kept on stealing references from films that he liked and say, this is what we're going to do to, this is the direction we're going to go for, this particular photograph. And then, so we're kind of like copying these movies. And then I go and I talk to, I don't know, directors or people in creative situations, and they're pulling out the Gregory Crutzen books as references. So it's like, it's a reference of a reference.
Yeah. Right.
That's great. Matt has a question for each of you about if you have a favorite project that you worked on that you found especially satisfying, one that you'd love to go back and work on again if you could.
Oh. I don't know. I mean, honestly, a Grand Budapest was kind of being thrown into the briar patch of my own education and upbringing and and family there. So there was something very, but I mean, I don't know, there's they're all interesting. I mean, I love them all. But that was probably the kind of the most sort of like, I don't know, just I'm really happy to be here.
Well, and where were you when you were making that movie?
In Germany, southeasternmost Germany, right by the Polish border, in a little town called Görlitz. Very cute. And
Sometimes
around
that's like where you are, because the production office is just usually the cheapest place they can find to stash people. And Dan, you probably, you don't even get that. We all have to work with what we have. And sometimes the best part of the movie is how nice it is to work on it rather than how the movie looks in the end. Or even sometimes you could be challenged and turn out amazingly beautiful work, but the experience of doing it is just kind of like a bit of suffering because of where you are, or the food they serve, or the people you have to work with, or the smell in the room, or like I can't stand the smell of Fabuloso, but they kept cleaning the bathroom, which somehow was like down the hall from my desk. And like every day I worked on this wonderful show, but I couldn't bear to be there because it was just, that smell was too much. And then of course, when the ceiling caved in with the toilet water from upstairs, that was not so good. But the show itself,
I didn't know about
I know
that.
you didn't even hear about that. But that's the Woody Allen Company. They don't spend money on office space.
No.
No, or lunch. So I guess I would say a movie that oddly, it was a Woody movie that we did well, that Cafe Society was like right there with all of the 30s references I love so much.
Yeah.
But every movie has some bit that you really invest yourself into, and it feels great to turn it out, and you're so proud of it. And then of course they cut it and you don't see it in the movie, but or it's in so far in the background that I'm like, it was supposed to be in that. Oh, there it is behind the sofa or whatever it is. And you feel like all your hard work is not paying off, and yet you worked on the film and people love it. And sometimes
Yeah.
the film you loved to work on is not the film that people love, and the vice versa.
Dan,
I
what
would
was
agree
your
that what the you take something away from every job. And as Perry was saying, sometimes it's the people you get to work with, sometimes it's the people you have to work with. So there's good, there's bad, that's going to be a good story. This is going in my portfolio. I don't worry about AI, but CGI has changed my world a lot. So much blue and green. You used to make an entire world, and now it's much smaller. Anything close to the actor you might make. And in the background, that's all just green screen or blue screen. Or so you learn and you adapt. And some of those crazy adventures I had 30 years ago, that becomes Perry's job now, or some other CG artist. It's not AI, but yeah, you take something away from every job. That's the goal. A good time, a bad time. You learn something, got to keep learning. It's too frustrating if you're not learning something new. So there you go.
It's true that the challenges are often the best parts, where like you're not just phoning it in or doing something you already did, but a problem is presented and you have just no idea how to tackle it, and everybody gets involved. Or maybe you're just staying up all night and then you have to do it. Like the time will not allow you to not create it. You must deliver. And that's one of the, I guess, amazing things to people when they see like a regular graphic designer who does normal packaging or works with clients. They'll say, how long does it take you to do a logo? And I'll say, like, a logo, like for a company, just a logo? I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or I might do 20 in 5 minutes. And they're like, 5 minutes? And I say, well, don't forget the approval process that I have is different than yours. Like you might have to go through committee after committee, and I just have the production designer to say, like, move on, done.
Exactly.
And but I might create, who knows, like products and posters and logos and stuff all in a day. And each one of them has got to be different. And sometimes, to be fair, after I've made something I really like, I keep it. And I might change the name because I keep the type live in Illustrator or whatever the file is. And some of these Adobe programs that I use, Photoshop and Illustrator, are nested together. So I can open a beautiful cigarette ad that I did. And now the cigarette is going to not be named, like Scout. It's going to be named, Navajo or something. But fortunately, my file is created in such a way that the text is live, and I can simply retype Scout into Navajo and change the design a little bit, and within 10 minutes it's been remade. And I'll change the color, or I'll replace some element of it that makes it different enough that it's not the same image, but I know it's there and I know how to remake it. And for me, it's a matter of a few minutes, and so that's fun. And sometimes you hammer at things for months, and if you have months to work on it and you just can't get it, the director's just not pleased, and then finally they phone it in and you get something terrible that your name goes on, unfortunately.
I think a last question we have is Laurel asks, do you all get to see the movie premiere before it goes out to the public?
No.
Not necessarily. No. Sometimes I get invited to fancy parties, for a premiere or something like that. So that's before it's, in a theater. There is absolutely no convention of sharing, early cuts with the people whose job is done in the art department. That just doesn't happen. And so I mean, there have been a number of films I worked on where, the way I got to see them was by walking into a movie theater and buying a ticket. So
That's true. Sometimes you're given a DVD. Sometimes. That's rare.
Or they'll have a cast and crew screening or something like that.
Yeah, that can happen.
Um, or there's a premiere and you get to go to that, which can be lovely. But I mean, look, I mean, if they spell your name right on the credits, that's already good. I mean, that's
Right, but you can't count on IMDb to have the right information. That I know is like, take it with a grain of salt and try correcting it. Like, that's years of work and a graduate degree.
During award season, do you get to or have to watch a lot of things so you can vote? Are you members of?
well, I'm in the academy, which is amazing because my friend Deborah in New York, set decorator, put me up. But so that's been fun, and there's like a lovely thing that the academy has called the screening room. So you actually get access, like Netflix or whatever, to streaming all kinds of whatever movies are out. I mean, sometimes they're in theaters, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're obscure. And anyway, I enjoyed that very much, but currently I'm behind on my academy dues, and they've cut me out. So
They've pulled your privileges.
exactly, they yanked my privileges. I called them up. I said, "Come on, I mean, didn't you realize it was like a strike all this last?" But
Yeah, the strike's been devastating. I don't know, we haven't mentioned that enough, I think, but yeah, it's been pretty bad. But basically for a year, we're all out of work. Even though it was the writers striking, and even though it was the actors striking, anybody who works on a movie or anybody who does things where the movies are their mainstay, they don't have anything.
Nothing was happening at all.
Terrible.
It's taking a while to get back up.
It is.
Yeah.
It seems that way.
I know.
You can't tell, but we've all gotten
the last couple of days. So I'm feeling hopeful. I mean, it's just like, people call you up and, are you real? I mean, and a lot of times they're not. So
Are you real? Do you say that? Do you actually say those words?
I don't say that. I always am very complimentary and flattering and say, I love the script, if you have. So anyway. Well, this is super fun. Any other questions or?
I don't know if we have any other questions, but I have a quick one. I know that Deborah was zooming in from Rhode Island, and you're all based in the Berkshires now. So you don't have to live in Hollywood or New York. Did you, any of you start out? I know Carl started out in the city, but did you start your careers, Perry and Dan, in the city and then move, or did you start from where you are in terms of getting involved in films and things?
I started in the city. I started in New York. That's where my connections were, and I had a family, and we wanted to move. And it's funny that I would, hours on movies are rather long, so I would leave before everybody woke up, and I would come home after they went to sleep. And the only way they knew that I was actually home at night was that the laundry was done and the dishes were stacked, and it dawned on me that I didn't have to live in New York City to work in New York, since my family never saw me when I was working anyway. We might as well live somewhere, pleasant and tree lined and beautiful, and I could afford it. And I live not a commutable distance away. Like, I can't go every day, but it's workable. And my family lives in New York. I mean, my extended family and friends, and everybody's willing to offer a couch or a room where the kid has gone off to college. And so I can work from the Berkshires in terms of go to where the work is and stay there. And it should be made clear also on movies, some movies, they'll just hire the local talent, not for Carl's job, but for my job. But sometimes there isn't that person, and they might put you up when you get there. and that's a union rule as well. Like they'll give you a living allowance, I guess they call it, and you can in New England, which is different than New York. Like everybody lives somewhere else. They don't all live in Boston. Many people like Dan comes from far away and works wherever I guess the job is, right?
That's true. I grew up in Connecticut, worked in Connecticut, moved to Boston, and I've worked primarily in Boston or in New England for more than 3 decades. I've done stints in New York. I did a show with Carl and Perry and a Woody Allen show there. I did several years ago, I had worked with a Hollywood painter in Boston repeatedly. We did the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight Rises, and I ran the New York end for this particular painter. He had done all the movies, and Gotham is a weird whatever that word is, mix up. So like I got to do that adventure. That's a great adventure. Our little piece of it that was actually in New York was very small compared to the whole thing. The way they edited it all together, Pittsburgh, LA, blah, blah, all sorts of places. But that was cool. Getting to access to these places, getting to see all the things, the Batmobiles and the helicopters and the crazy adventure, but very intense and very short. It was like 6 weeks, and that was crazy. It was like, how did I get here? I have no idea, but really great.
A lot of money, a lot of money, a lot of ambition on that project.
Oh yes. And since the section I did was the culmination of the 3 movies, like all the important people were there. No expense was, they would ask you to go to the moon and back by lunch, but they also gave you the resources to do it. And it was really interesting, really fun. And I met a lot of great people. And but yeah, I've never worked in LA. I don't need to, I don't want to. I've traveled a bunch for theater and opera and whatnot when I was younger, and that was great. And I'm not against it, but yeah, you don't have to be in my job. You can't work remotely. That's the drag of it. You got to go in. You got to be on the floor.
Yeah.
So
Right. The paintbrush is only so long.
no.
Well, this has been great. I want to let you guys go so you can have dinner and whatnot, but I really appreciate you all being here with us tonight. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, Carl's show is up through February 24th. Our hours are Tuesday through Saturday, noon to 5, and late on Thursday nights till 8 p.m. So, and we have, I mentioned before, we have one more event, a ticketed event called Supper Club, and you can find out more about it on our website, opalka.sage.edu.
And I'll call you about that and figure out what we're going to do. That'll be
Okay.
great. So
And
And
wonderful.
you should go to that. I've seen the show. It's great.
Yeah, it's so great to have you with me, and thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you for your questions and interest. You know, it's an interesting business is the thing. So it's
well,
that it is.
yes, thank you all for coming, and again, thank you to our panelists. It was very interesting.
Great.
Great.
So much.
Thank you all.
so much.
Much
Have a good
appreciated.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. Talk to you
Dan,
shortly.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Perry.
Nice to meet you.
Bye, Carl.